let's just get started here. Let's start by checking out. This is a video from a guy named Moon. This is called How Spotify is Changing Our World Forever. Let's dive into it.
Spotify isn't the app you think it is. You see, there's been a ton of apps and websites that stream music way before Spotify.
Yeah.
Napster, Grooveshark, Pandora, Deezer. And yet all these companies are either struggling to stay afloat, defunct, or destroyed by lawsuits. Because simply put, the business model of streaming music for free isn't really profitable or in most cases even legal. I mean, Napster was literally the prototype for Spotify.
Yeah, we know all about Napster and Metallica. We know all about that. We know all about that Napster. I remember LimeWire back in the day, man. That's how I used to load up my my old MP3 players and you know, the early iPods and stuff like that.
It was the same service and the same idea, and yet in just 3 years, Napster went bankrupt with $10 million in debt. But somehow Spotify comes out on top, raking in over $10 billion in 2021 alone. So how can Spotify possibly be making this much money? How can streaming music that's owned by record labels with limited ads and being forced to pay 30% of all its revenue to its biggest competitor Apple still be standing so strong?
I'm going to guess a lot of it has to do with the podcast market. I'm going to guess that there's probably a ton of ad money from podcasts nowadays. That's my guess. We'll see, though.
Why didn't Spotify collapse like Napster? Well, in trying to answer these questions, I fell down a rabbit hole. Corruption, military AI technology, emotional manipulation, and censorship. You see, the story of Spotify goes far beyond music alone. So to understand how Spotify truly makes its money, let's head back to where it all started.
Okay. Military technology.
Huge presence, Spotify was founded quite late into the history of
streaming. And yeah, I've heard of them, Grim.
Music. Lots of competitors
I don't know if I like them or not, though.
And failed to succeed. The difference with Spotify was its founder, Daniel Ek. Daniel was, in all senses of the word, a business prodigy.
That's the guy who is, you know, inadvertently and also just, you know, directly responsible for the metal playlists on Spotify being just total junk now, man. Total junk. It's his fault.
Everyone else's age was still playing Mario 64. Daniel was building a business. At just 13 years old, Daniel had started his first business of many as a web designer. His contract started at $100, but they quickly grew in size until he was charging $5,000 per website. Daniel even hired other kids, bribing them with video games as they worked on his websites in the school computer room. And then just 5 years later, at the age of 18, and Daniel was making $50,000 a month and had a team of 25 people under him. After working on various companies,
bro, when I was 13, I might have just started playing WoW. I mean, when I was 13, I might have just started playing WoW. I was not making hundreds of dollars a month at that time, building websites. Definitely not. And did you check out my new playlist? Did you link it in the chat on Saturday? If so, I missed it. You just have to DM it to me on Instagram.
Such as eBay, Daniel Ek would soon settle as the founder of an advertising company. This too was then sold in 2006, leaving Daniel a millionaire by his early 20s. This rocketing career had put Dan in contact with lots of powerful people who would be the heralds of a new golden age for tech startups. For example, Daniel had made contacts with the founder of uTorrent, a man named Ludwig. Ludwig would later work as one of Daniel's lead developers. It was these sorts of connections that would be a huge asset to Daniel.
Yeah, we'll have to do that, Glinting.
Most ambitious
we'll have to build one.
Spotify. Like I mentioned, the idea for Spotify wasn't new. There had been lots of music streaming and downloading services before. The most prominent of these, and the one which gave the most inspiration for Ek, was Napster. Now, Napster wasn't particularly polished or even very user-friendly.
So yeah, obviously we know the thing with Metallica and Napster, but I was too young to use Napster. I was more in the era of LimeWire. Napster, like he said, I believe it was like 1998 to like 2001 or whatever is when it got popular, and then it eventually went bankrupt. So I was only like 8 years old. I just wasn't even on my radar.
But the greatness of Napster was that it gave its users unlimited free access to a vast range of music. People loved what they could discover through the platform. It was for this reason that it exploded in popularity shortly after its founding. However, the trouble for Napster was exactly that. It was free. Its emphasis on peer-to-peer sharing made the platform perfect for sharing pirated music. Napster's short life was marked by both a massive influx of users, but also massive amounts of lawsuits. The troubles for Napster began when Metallica happened to hear a song that they had made being played on someone's car radio, and yet they hadn't actually released the song. Through some snooping, they found out that a demo of the track had been leaked on Napster.
Oh, damn. Oh, so that's what it was. So that's why Metallica got all bent out of shape, was that it was a leaked demo of a song that hadn't come out yet. Interesting. Okay, I didn't know that detail.
across the internet, as well as all their other work. This led Metallica to file a lawsuit against Napster for copyright infringement in March of 2000, just 1 year after Napster was released. Then Dr. Dre was quick to follow, also suing Napster a month later. The floodgates were open, and soon enough, Napster was buried in legal challenges and copyright accusations. Although this would soon
I haven't read it, Glinting, but I did see that.
Probably increased its notoriety, if anything. I mean, at its peak, Napster had amassed over 18 million registered users. College campuses even had to ban Napster from their internet networks, after Napster's MP3 downloads made up over 60% of colleges' external network traffic.
Dude, okay, so over 60% of the traffic from colleges and 80 million registered users. Back in like early 2000s, late 90s. That is insane. Like, that's absurd.
Eventually, Napster's legal troubles caught up with them and they filed for bankruptcy. But for a brief period of time,
Napster was that big.
Public good.
God
it was freely
damn.
available to anyone with a computer and an internet.
And it's all because of that band that we heard in Stranger Things, man. They took it down. The goddamn Stranger Things rock band. They took down Napster. God damn it.
Connection. The idea of music existing at one's
What's up, Regenerated?
Was a tantalizing idea for many startups, which is why you'd see many.
And yeah, Henry, LimeWire, which I'm sure he's gonna. We see it right there on the left there. I'm sure that he's gonna talk about LimeWire a little bit, but yeah, LimeWire used to F your computer up, dude. It was bad.
Similar services prop up out of nowhere. For example, LimeWire and Kazaa were almost carbon copies of one
I
another.
never heard of Kazaa or whatever. I've never heard of that.
Also going down the same way Napster would, by being shut down by copyright lawsuits. It seemed like the model for free instant music was incompatible with a legal successful business. However, one man would end up breaking this mold, which brings us back
Dying
to
Wish is
Daniel
awesome.
Ek. Daniel, prior to founding Spotify.
So before he gets into the details about Spotify, like I remember Spotify. Man, I want to say like I first heard about it in some way. Like I believe that it was it like 2007 or 8 or something like that is like when I think I first heard about Spotify, but it wasn't anywhere near like the type of presence it is now. I can't remember exactly what it was for, but for some reason I remember knowing about it a long time ago.
Was well aware of the dangers, but thought that they would work themselves out. He had seen Napster and all the others picked off one by one, but this didn't faze him. Where some might see adversity, Daniel was seeing opportunity. The technology already existed for something like Spotify, and as streaming and internet connections became faster by the day, it seemed certain that streaming music for free would become a reality. But the real problem here was convincing the record labels, who held all the legal power over music, to allow one of these services to exist. The artist would also need to be cut in, although their take would be far exceeded by the giants of the industry.
Right.
For Daniel though, these were the problems of the future. The only thing on his mind was the product. So by using the money he'd gained from his early years, as well as some angel investments from his
2010, maybe it was like 2010.
His chips on Spotify. Back then, Spotify was using innovative technology that enabled the client to download songs in bite-sized chunks, rather than the whole songs or albums at one time. Similar to how YouTube was.
Interesting.
By designing the app in this way, Spotify reduced buffering substantially and even enabled instant playback for songs on the app. In this way, Spotify was already different from Napster, but it still paid homage in other ways. For example, Spotify's original catalog of music was nearly completely pirated. Spotify hadn't even been released, so there was no way Daniel was going to convince the record labels to let him use a legit catalog, which put Spotify dangerously close to Napster in the way it did business, although it still lacked peer-to-peer sharing. After months of demanding work from Daniel and a small team of developers, Spotify was released.
Okay, so that sounds like that was really the main difference, is that Napster you could share, whereas on Spotify, like they were at first pirated songs, but they weren't. You weren't sharing them between people.
As a beta test. The blood, sweat, and tears
if I'm understanding that correctly
was clearly visible because everyone who used Spotify loved its ease of use and lack of buffering. It was an amazing product, but before it was even released, Daniel would find out the harsh truth that it wouldn't ever live up to his idealistic dreams for the music world. Spotify was brought down to earth once Daniel learned what the record labels would ask for to license their music. And once he finally convinced the labels to sit down, things didn't go as planned. You see, Ek proposed to the labels that Spotify would be a free app, where all the revenue would be generated from ads. And to his dismay, the record labels were horrified. Instead, the labels demanded a fixed price for each stream of any song or album. Obviously, this solution wouldn't work, so a compromise was made. Spotify would still have its free model with ads, but would also offer a monthly subscription in return for no ads and other features. The record labels would take a huge cut of this premium money, as well as from the advertising revenue. Amazingly for Daniel, the deal was
Yes, obviously you have the memberships, which obviously take up a big portion of the income and the revenue that Spotify has. But I also believe that just ads from podcasts as well. Because I don't really know how many does any. I don't know if any of you guys in the chat have Spotify like a free version. Like I just don't feel like people do that. I could be totally wrong, but I don't know. I don't know of it. I don't think I know anybody who has like the free version of Spotify.
Struck, and Spotify was now 2 steps up from Napster. Daniel had seemingly done the impossible. He had put the record labels at bay, and everything.
You have Spotify free?
perfect.
Interesting.
However, this came with big cost for the app. It would effectively stun the application from its inception.
No, you're not
horrified.
no Splash. You're definitely not a loser. It's just like I just didn't know. I didn't know of anybody. But what is that experience like? Like listening to music on there? Is there a lot of ads? Like, is it every song there's an ad? Is it like every like 3 songs? Like, is it just like annoying how many ads there are? Like, I'm very curious.
To see that lots of the features they had worked on so hard for the free version would be removed, placed behind a paywall. For a business that had been about the product from day one, even just releasing was costing the company its founding principles. But even worse than this was the awful position these deals put Spotify into. The benefits of no longer relying on a pirated catalog were far outshined by the power that the music industry now had over Spotify. The big record labels even took a cut of Spotify itself, helping themselves to shares in the company. They had total control of Spotify. So one question remained for Daniel was,
so not only are the record labels getting like their share of just because of the memberships and whatnot or in the ads, but they have shares and stake in the company. It's every 3 songs per ad. Okay, there's a ton of ads. Yeah, it's annoying. User topic channels on YouTube is way better. Interesting, huh? Interesting. Okay, Spotify or Pandora. I like because I have like the Spotify membership, so I love Spotify. I think Spotify is amazing for music discovery. Like I used to have Apple Music, which was good, like if you knew what you wanted to listen to. But for music discovery, if you like want to go down that rabbit hole, Spotify is amazing. And then Glinton says, I have Amazon Music to listen to music. So Spotify is so good for finding music. I use it and follow 1,500 bands to get in-app notifications for music when oh, okay, that's a good idea. That makes sense, yeah.
Spotify even worth it? Well, the answer to this was yes, and so Spotify sold out. While this deal did let Spotify survive as a company, avoiding the downfalls of Napster.
I'm on a label, and I find it frustrating how most of the PR goes on Spotify placement, which is cool, but I'd rather it was more towards radio play. Well, I guess it really depends on what genre you're in, right? Like, for certain genres, radio is probably still relevant, but sadly for a lot of them, it's just not. Radio just isn't really that relevant anymore. But I think it all depends on the genre for sure. The worst part about free Spotify isn't the ads. It's that they add rando songs to your playlist you don't want. Oh, really? That's really interesting. I didn't know that. Huh? That's a really interesting thing. I love the premium version of Spotify. Yeah, the premium version is awesome. I enjoy it a lot. Spotify is the best. You go to MySpace. Really? Is MySpace still a thing? And when you remove them, they add more. So it's like, so they pulled like the old U2 album. They just put random songs on your playlist. That's so funny. Spotify doesn't pay the artists as much as other streaming services. That's a point that comes to mind as well. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like I could one day I could probably show you guys like my DistroKid account to like show you like the breakdown and stuff like that. But it is less, but it's not anything like super noticeable. Because like it'd be nice if people like bought the songs like on iTunes, but they just don't. And I know that. We've got some radio play, which is neat, but I have no idea how to reach a bigger audience. So for a lot of bands, like these Spotify playlists, again, depending on your genre, these Spotify playlists can be absolutely gigantic for like even like lower bands. But the problem though is that they get so many songs sent to them every day that getting on one of those playlists is quite difficult. Like it really is. Yeah, it's difficult. Spotify is good for discovering new people, but I have a good connection. So I think Spotify is so great because like all of us here in the chat, like we're all like very like dedicated listeners to like metalcore, deathcore and stuff like that. So we know of like the new bands, but for like the random guy who works like the 9 to 5, doesn't really participate in like reaction channels or doesn't participate in Twitch, and he's just like, what kind of music's out today? It's like going to like, the old new core, the deathcore playlist, or the new metal tracks is awesome.
And so many other platforms. This deal, however, also changed the platform significantly. Record labels own so much of Spotify now that they have implemented their own changes to the platform. One of these changes is based around playlists.
Teeth is
Spotify
awesome.
puts a lot of emphasis on playlists. They're the front and center of the main page. The vast majority of these playlists are algorithmically derived. It's usually impossible to tell whether a human or robot chose the songs. But how does Spotify choose which songs to put in them? Well, the facts are that Spotify doesn't actually choose. The record labels choose. These playlists are a huge part of Spotify, and it's how most people around the world listen to their music. And yet,
so he says there that the record labels choose which songs go on the playlists. In my experience, I'm sure that's definitely true, right? Like, I'm sure that there's like a lot of record labels that they have the pull, and with Spotify and whatnot, like they have the connections and stuff like that. But there are bands that, again, I'm trying to look like not just in metal, because metal, I definitely think that there are opportunities there, like for you to get on these playlists. Because I mean, even in True Shot, we were on a couple Spotify playlists. Nothing like crazy or anything like New Blood and stuff like that, but we did get on them. So yeah, they definitely have some pull for sure. I'm sure like with like pop and stuff like that, I'm sure it's rampant with just like, like Universal or, stuff like that. Like those record labels are just like, yeah, like these are the songs that are going on. Any other ways, for sure, which you allude to, I run a music blog, although I don't write there very much anymore. When I did, give the band some PR short-lived. Yeah, and that's the thing, too. It's like blogs, like I think the idea of a blog is cool. It's just like, now I think a lot of people just want to like listen to stuff like podcasts or watch stuff like YouTube, unfortunately. I still think blogs definitely have a place, but it's definitely going much more visual or audio-based media. Well, the labels know what songs have potential. That's a great point too. Like, yeah, like the labels. Well, I think the labels can identify the talent, but I also think that they definitely want to get their artists on there because it just kind of refeeds this machine of like because they probably have like these contracts set up where they get so many percentage of the streaming revenue and whatnot. So they're like, yeah, throw it on a playlist, get it some extra streams, we get some extra money, win-win for everybody.
These playlists are perfectly designed to promote a small group of popular artists which the music industry chooses.
I hate to pause it again, but yeah, it's different avenues, clever avenues. I still think at the end of the day, no matter what, like I see all these YouTube channels all the time about like, how to hack Spotify, how to hack your way to success. Straight up, like the first thing is just having good music. Like that to me, like word of mouth. Like it could be 1950 or it could be the year 2050. Word of mouth will always be the number one source of advertising any good product. Music, whatever. If the song is good, people will find it. It may not be super fast or compared to other bands or whatever, but it will be found for sure.
Each playlist only includes the music that these record labels want to promote, which leaves independent artists completely excluded from a huge part of the platform. This creation of music eventually became disastrous for small artists, as it makes it almost impossible for them to be seen by the public eye. However, this playlist problem is just a small part of the issue.
Yeah, I definitely think for probably like pop and like rap, like the Rap Caviar playlist, which let's just pull up Rap Caviar real quick. I know that my screen is like a little cropped, a little weird, but yeah, Rap Caviar. Like, imagine you're a rapper, 14.5 million followers on that playlist. If you got on that playlist, that would be like a career-defining moment. Like, that is an insane amount of... It is only 50 songs, too. So there's less to kind of sort through. Whereas some of, like, the metal ones, like, let's look at, like, all new metal or whatever. I can't remember. Yeah, all new metal... so this only has 51 songs. Okay, that was 655,000 likes. So it's like, it's not even... That playlist, the Rap Caviar playlist, has almost 14 million more followers. It's crazy.
There are numerous similar
Spotify playlist is basically a new radio station. Yeah, exactly.
The record label's interests at the expense of a level playing field. From the browse system to the homepage to even the search function, Spotify has given the record labels the power to curate people's music. Not only does it directly cause a homogenized corporate musical landscape on the site, it also directly funnels listeners towards certain large record labels' music.
So just another thing too about playlists, like when my old band True Shot was first starting out, I don't do this anymore with Bitter Bliss, but when True Shot was first starting out, we would like, when I say we, I do mean me, but I'll say we. Like we would go to Spotify and search just like we would just search like metalcore, and then we would look for playlists that looked like they could be like, you know, metalcore playlists. We would look to see if they all had contact information, and we would contact the playlist owners to try to get on their playlist to try to, you know, just get. It was pretty much the equivalent of trying to get so many playlists that you're on like one Spotify playlist. But then what you find out is that all these playlist people are charging money to get on these playlists, and they're all filled with bots, and they're fake. You know, it's just not real. So yeah, if anyone's interested, I wrote a long-ass blog post about how Spotify placement and how effective it was. DM me if you're interested. Yeah, no, if you can link it in the chat, that's totally fine. If anybody's interested, they can check it out. When I say we, I mean me. I mean, hey, listen, I'm just being honest, okay? I mean, that was me. But yeah, it's the playlisting, man, especially like, I think for metal it still obviously matters, but you know whose playlist is the best metal playlist to get on? And I can tell you from experience, is Nick Nocturnal's Modern Metal Spotify playlist. It may not have as many followers or likes as these other metal playlists, but like there's real people listening to it all the time. So like I would love to have an experiment where, because you know I usually get on Nick's playlists, so I would love for one of my songs to get on Nick's playlist and on like a big Spotify playlist, so I can do a direct compare and contrast. Because I've been told that Nick's is better, but I would like to know for myself, of course.
This mechanism gives the labels an even larger share of the profits that they already get. Because record labels get shares in Spotify, part of the profits, lots of royalties from streams, and then direct curation of the platform.
So wait, hold on, what was that?
Spotify, part of the profits, lots of royalties from streams, and then direct curation of the platform.
So some of these bigger record labels get shares in Spotify, which we established that they get part of the profit of Spotify, royalties from the streams, and direct curation on the platform. So that's a thing, right? Is like where they do have like that direct curation power, they can then filter those songs in there, which will get more traction on Spotify, but also then kind of like feeding themselves their own money, which that's hey, gotta make that money. You know what I mean? You gotta make that money.
Platform. But what's left for the artists, for the people who actually made the music? Well, on average, each stream gives an artist just $0.0033, an absolutely minuscule amount. This effectively means that you need
That's a great point, Zab.
To make even small amounts of money from Spotify.
See, so what is this? You got like Karol G, Avicii, Michael Jackson.
I mean, most artists have to rely on constant touring to stay afloat.
Yeah, that's the thing. Constant touring to just stay afloat. That's true. However, like I'm telling you, like you can make pretty decent money, like especially like if you just keep it going, right? So like if you can somehow, and it's really tough, but if you can somehow find a way as an artist, and especially like my project is just me, so I'm I live or dies by what I do. But if I'm able to sustain supporting the project monetarily over time, I know that there will be a return on that investment over time. It's not going to happen quickly. It's going to happen slowly. But with streams and stuff like that, like especially if you get on these Spotify playlists or you get on Nick's playlist or whatever, the streams, like they may not pay a ton, but like for example, I think on average for me, right, it's like I'd say like every 100,000 streams is about $400. That's roughly what I think it is. So the way that I think of it is like, I try to go into this, like, for example, Family Enemy, right? I probably invested about, I don't know, I'd say probably about overall like $2,500 on that song, right? Probably like $2,500 on that song. And I've made, about a little over $400 in streaming revenue, some off of YouTube, probably some purchases and stuff like that, but I'd have to go and check. So, and it's only been a few months, right? So it's like, I feel like as time goes on and you kind of have like the waterfall of streams and whatnot, you will get that money back. It's just, it's hard, especially as an artist who's signed to these record labels who have these contracts that are just like, we get all of your stuff essentially, except for, if you go touring, you get your merch sales and all that stuff. It's rough, man. Unless you're like, that's why, like, I wonder how many bands, like metalcore bands, are like, that's it. That's all they do for an income, is they just play metalcore music. They tour, they sell merch, they write music. That's it. I bet those bands are very few and far between. Very few and far between.
Prospect that was made even worse by the pandemic, and as the big record labels increase their control over Spotify, they're able to squeeze even more money from the platform. This money inevitably has to come from other groups' shares, with the artists taking the hardest hit to their bottom line. It's therefore no wonder that artists have vocally protested and boycotted Spotify numerous times over its lifespan. Now, one of the most recent boycotts was done by Neil Young, and while yes, this had to do a lot with Joe Rogan and his naughty words, it was also about Spotify's business model and the minuscule amount of royalties being paid to artists. And Neil
They play live, so it's not an avenue for me. Yeah, and see, the thing is, like, if you're a solo artist, I think that there is a way that you can still make money without ever touring. It is possible. It's not easy, but it's possible. Probably being as an ocean because they're permanently touring. Yeah, bands like Wage War are always on tour, but yeah.
Neil Young wasn't the first. From Taylor Swift to the Beatles, lots of huge artists have tried to resist Spotify's dominance over the music industry. And yet despite this, all the artists that tried to boycott Spotify are now back on the platform. Even Neil Young, who was protesting Spotify just months ago, has now quietly rejoined the platform. Unsatisfied with the power that Spotify's launch deal
I honestly
gave them,
don't
various
remember
giants in the
Caro.
music industry have used every tool in their arsenal to exploit Spotify's relative weakness. This has come in the form of mountains of legal challenges, not unlike those faced by Napster, and Spotify has only managed to weather the storm because of their insider status. For example, Wixen Music Publishing sued Spotify in 2018 for infringing on the rights of their artists such as Neil Young and the Black Keys. This was only one record label, and they sued Spotify for $1.6 billion. Spotify settled for an undisclosed amount, which clearly shows how Spotify is at the mercy of these companies. And despite striking deals that are ludicrously lucrative for them, the record labels always want more. Of course, all these lawsuits are disguised as being for the artist's benefits. But then who are these mysterious people? Who are these greedy disguised
What did that
as being
say?
for the artist?
Piracy, file sharing, and streaming have shrunk the numbers of paid album sales drastically, and every artist has handled this blow differently. Yeah, I mean, you see it all the time now. I mean, there's like conversion rates for number of streams equals one album sale, but like they always show like the total number of pure album sales. Those numbers are going down. I don't know. I feel like physical media is just dying out. Physical media is just dying. I mean, there's obviously people who like it for like collectibles, or just people that just straight up just still like it. But as time goes on, man, it's like that stuff's going away. Like nobody really wants like a physical CD or vinyl. Now I know some people in the chat will say that they do, but I mean, just compared to the rest of like the population, that's just not the case. And so if somebody's like, yeah, I don't really care about physical media, are they really gonna buy the album like on iTunes? I don't think so. I just don't see it. It's like, why would you if you're already probably paying a subscription to either Apple Music or Spotify or whatever? You're just going to stream it. You know, you're just going to stream it. Physical media pays way more. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it definitely does. But, and you love buying CDs. Yeah, I mean, it definitely pays more. I know that people still like it, but just as a whole, if you're paying a streaming subscription, you're not, I mean, unless you're like a dedicated fan or whatever, like I just don't, or collectibles, you're just not going to buy it in my experience. Yeah, I only get CDs these days if it's an old or a favorite band I think needs support. Yeah, there's definitely that for sure.
Artist benefits. But then who are these mysterious people? Who are these greedy, ruthless companies demanding more and more? Well, to really understand the problem with Spotify, we need to have a closer look at who's pulling the strings. You see, back in 2015, Spotify sought to secure another $500 million of investments to delay going public, all because of the looming threats of lawsuits. Usually when companies do this, they refer themselves to a third party that can broker a deal with other investors. Spotify did this because they needed money. They desperately needed investors. And one of the main investors that would poison Spotify.
Let me guess. Saudi Arabia. Are you ready? I'm gonna guess. It's the Saudis. I'm gonna guess.
For years to come was Goldman Sachs.
Well, close enough. But no, okay, so Goldman Sachs. Okay.
But before we continue, I want to talk to you about the video sponsor, Keeps. Did you know that 2 out of 3 guys will experience hair loss by age?
Not me. Not me. Oh, by 35. I still got a little bit of time. But I'm still good for now. I'm still good. I'm still good with keeps. I'm still good.
35. Although this isn't inevitable. In fact, it's widely known that the best way to prevent hair loss is to catch it before it gets bad.
Yeah.
And that's where Keeps comes in. Research-backed hair loss and hair growth therapies, where you'll receive high-quality care without ever having to visit a doctor. Because Keeps has a network of expert medical advisors, prescribers, and care specialists to support you in making your hair goals a reality. Each treatment plan comes with a full year of unlimited messaging so you can connect with your prescribing doctor about anything, anytime.
Look at that.
All of Keeps' treatment programs comes with a doctor's recommendation.
That'll probably happen, Zab, and then
all at a fraction of the cost of a regular
and then I
pharmacy.
can't get Keeps
Hair loss stops
anymore.
Keeps. So to get 50% off your first order, go to
There you go.
keeps.com/moon or click the link in the description below. That's keeps.com/moon.
All right. Yeah.
Goldman Sachs seemed like a gold.
Actually, real quick before we continue the video, I'm curious what so Spotify stock. Let's see where they're at right now. Because yeah, okay, so they're at 119.70 a share. Look at the last 6 months. You know, they've kind of gone up and down. But yeah, they hit their peak in in like the COVID era. That's where they hit their peak. Dude, look at that. Holy smokes. At one point they were going for $339.70 a share. Holy shit. That's crazy.
Godsend for Spotify back in 2018.
Shoulder
Because
length
Spotify
there?
needed money
Damn.
badly.
Rock that,
Which
my
seems
dude.
strange because at the same time, Spotify was growing exponentially. In 2011,
Last I did is
Spotify
keep up
reported
with the
a
hair
client
reveal,
base
yeah.
of 1 million paying customers across Europe in March 2011.
That's
And by
almost
September
GameStop level.
2011,
Yeah, they
that
lost
number was 2 million. Then in June 2015, this
like
number
$200
was
a share.
75 million users. Spotify's growth was unprecedented, and Daniel Ek had achieved the impossible. By this point, Spotify
So at that point, they were at 75 million users, which still wasn't even as much as Napster in the late 90s, early 2000s. That just shows you like how, because there was nothing to do on the internet back then, right? Like there was nothing. Like you could probably load RuneScape, and that was about it. Like there was AIM chat rooms, so people were just like, hell yeah, we're just gonna listen to music.
was a household name. However, there was one issue. With its huge international
The good old
presence,
days.
everyone wanted a piece of Spotify. Lawsuits, ruthless competition from Apple Music, and artists threatening the platform completely, along with extra server costs, and Spotify needed money fast. They had to have power over the record labels, they needed to pay off all the lawsuits and defend the company from its ruthless competition. And to have the funds and management to do this, Spotify needed big investments quick, and who better to provide these investments than Goldman Sachs? Now who's Goldman Sachs? Well, Goldman Sachs is infamous for all the wrong reasons. Most notably in 2007, Goldman Sachs shorted millions of dollars worth of mortgage-backed securities for a huge profit that caused millions of families to go broke and wrecked the global economy for years.
True.
0.7% here, a loss of 37 points or so. Apple shares are just getting hammered this morning.
We're down by between 3 and 4.5% generally across these markets. Let's talk about the speed with which we are watching this market deteriorate. We're red everywhere, essentially, down by 4-5%.
And then when the public went broke and the entire world economy collapsed, the government gave Goldman Sachs an extra 10
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie The Big Short, but if you guys are interested, like that kind of gives like an interesting view into like the like how the housing market collapsed in 2008. I highly recommend watch that. Big Short is good. Yeah, it's a great movie. But yeah, Goldman Sachs was one of the people responsible for that.
$10 billion to keep this company happy. This was just one example of many that highlighted the insane power Goldman Sachs has over the world. But their power doesn't just extend to the US. Goldman Sachs is also credited with the destruction of the Greek government by masking the national debt the country had been accruing from 1998 to 2009. This in turn caused the 2010 EU sovereign debt crisis, which, long story short, helped end several EU national governments, namely Ireland, Portugal, Italy and France, among several others, with many of these countries going broke and then having to be bailed out by Goldman Sachs in return for power. Because of this reliance, Goldman Sachs oftentimes dictates economic policies in these countries, similar to how they control the companies reliant upon them.
Don't you love that? Whole countries being in the pocket of one company based in the US. Don't you love that? I love it.
Companies like Spotify. You see, the deal between Goldman Sachs and Spotify seemed perfect for Spotify at the time, just like it seemed perfect for EU governments going broke. This 2018 deal was that Goldman Sachs would use their partner's seed money to grow Spotify, and in return, Goldman Sachs would have big shares in the company, or at least that's what they wanted Spotify.
Oh wait, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. That the companies are like in the pockets of, how would I word that? Right, because it's like they kind of have direct control over some of these countries because they bailed them out. That's what I'm trying to say.
to think. The true value for Goldman Sachs would later become more apparent in future years. But bear with me, we'll get onto that soon. Okay, so then who did Goldman Sachs pick to invest in Spotify? Well, naturally, more members of their banking aristocracy. Goldman Sachs offered to help Spotify secure $500 million in investments, with most of these investments coming from monopoly venture capital firms such as Technology Crossover Ventures, or TCV for short. For a long time, TCV and Goldman Sachs have worked hand in hand to control all of our societal media. It's why they work together to dominate the current online landscape. They have massive control over Airbnb, ByteDance, Facebook, Netflix, and Zillow. All of these companies are heavily invested by these two. Okay, but what's the big deal? I mean, Goldman Sachs is responsible for international government collapse and the destruction of the American housing market, but we're talking about Spotify. Well, Goldman Sachs is seeking to capitalize on the streaming future of music. Goldman Sachs has been creating its own homogeny of music streaming services. It does this so it can profit from you by harvesting user data, partnering with established music industry titans, and profiteering from advertisements. It was by making these deals with Goldman Sachs that Spotify guaranteed itself to fall down a dark path, which will be explained shortly. But Goldman Sachs wasn't the only one. JP Morgan was also doing the exact same thing, and both these giant banking companies have extremely questionable ethics, and the consequences of this are becoming apparent with Spotify. At first, the real main consequence was just from others knowing about Goldman Sachs.
Okay, Morgan, I'll check that out.
Because once Spotify had received additional investment from investors, the record labels would then try to pocket more shares for themselves, despite Spotify still being unprofitable. While at the same time, the musicians on Spotify were hitting back at the company for their laughable revenue sharing with their artists. And these weren't just small artists. These artists included the greats like Pink Floyd and the Beatles, among many, many others. But investors didn't care about that. They understood that Spotify had such leverage over the music world that all bands would eventually have to crawl back to Spotify or choose to make less money. Because the truth was, Spotify was extremely popular now, with this growth then being accelerated after Spotify quickly struck an agreement with Facebook to incorporate Spotify on their platform. This was then followed by other Spotify bundles, tons of marketing, and the word of mouth in this quick free instant music app. With a simple user design, cheap costs, and massive catalogue of music, and Spotify was unstoppable. Yet despite its popularity, the site still wasn't breaking even, and time was ticking before investing.
I still don't know if to this day, they probably are making a profit now, but like, I don't know if, I wonder what Spotify's like profits and losses are these days, because it's a tough business model to make money off of. That's why, like, if like people say like, I wish that they paid the artist $1 a share, $1 a stream or whatever, like I'd love that too. But the fact of the matter is Spotify wouldn't exist. I mean, it just wouldn't exist anymore. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Yeah, Spotify, so they were at a point where they had like, they were getting this money from Goldman Sachs, and then the record labels wanted more shares, the artists wanted more money, and then eventually they were just like, hey, we got this money and we're pushing ahead, and they just were able to just take over the music industry, man.
Would start to raise some eyebrows over Spotify's long-term future. It was becoming very clear that Spotify could no longer just rely on ads in its premium subscriptions. Instead, to gain more power, trust, and revenue, Spotify needed better cash streams. Spotify's first and most effective cash stream would be to create their own musical hits and become the most successful record label. This would then give Spotify more leverage and power over the record labels, whilst also generating more revenue for the app. To do this, Spotify would invest all of its money into AI technology. Now, this AI technology was great for many users. It provided users many songs that they would never have heard before. However, by Spotify using more AI technology, Spotify could make their own songs go viral and promote them to the top of the music industry. This would then be a major threat to the record labels and would assert Spotify's control of the music industry.
So so to get back at the record labels, they developed this technology to like put these songs that didn't fall under that umbrella up, to elevate them, which then hurt their artists and then hurt, damn.
While at the same time, Spotify can then censor their competition, with Spotify already banning songs and artists for hate speech and their own personal controversies. By doing this, Spotify has free reign to pick who becomes popular and who doesn't. And this AI technology is becoming extremely advanced, where this AI takes popular song lyrics from the past and changes the words and vocals to match AI-generated drum beats.
Using deep neural networks?
What?
And changes the words and vocals to match AI-generated drum beats.
Using deep neural networks, Ava looks for patterns in the scores, and from a couple of bars of existing music, it actually tries to infer what notes should come next in those tracks. And Once Ava gets good at those predictions, it can actually build a set of mathematical rules for that style of music in order to create its own original compositions.
In fact, CEO Daniel Ek is positioning himself to be on
I don't even know what to say about that. That is, I've never heard that. That is absurd. Like, I honestly don't have any words for that. So they're able to, yes, also part of that too is that they can definitely probably recommend you songs based off of, you know, they probably base things off of like, you know, certain like drum patterns or just like BPM of a song, you know, stuff like that. It's like, and they can just AI generate their own music if they want. It's just so wild. Yeah, instead of future artists in the future, we're gonna have favorite algorithms. Damn. That's very prophetic sounding. Like, that is crazy to think about. Damn.
on top of the AI industry, with Daniel Ek announcing that his
SoundCloud.
investment
I never
company,
really
Hammer
used
Materia,
SoundCloud.
was going to be donating $150 million to a military defense
Yeah,
contractor
right, Zab?
named
That'd be funny.
Helsing, a military contractor that also specializes in artificial intelligence. Helsing
hold on, let me go back here real
the
quick.
AI
Original compositions.
In fact, CEO Daniel Ek is positioning himself to be on top of the AI industry, with Daniel Ek
Yeah.
announcing that his investment company Hammer Materia was going to be donating $150 million to a military defense contractor named Helsing,
Okay.
a military contractor that also specializes in artificial intelligence.
Okay, great.
Helsing is, in their own words, a new type of artificial intelligence company focused on defense and security. Defense may seem a surprising investment for us, but we share Helsing's conviction that liberal democratic values are worth defending and that artificial intelligence will be an essential capability to keep us safe. And this software is crazy advanced. This is AI that gathers data from multiple sensors on vehicles and systems to help people process complex and diverse information more reliably and act quickly. Using the secrets of this AI technology, and Spotify's music could cause a wave in the music industry. However, Spotify won't just be making money through its artificial songs. Spotify is adopting all of the Netflix business model. They won't just create their own music, they're now starting to license their own exclusive content.
The biggest example of this was the
Yeah.
$100 million deal between Spotify and Joe Rogan.
Yeah, they're just giving money to podcasts to make it like for exclusive content. They're launching. They're like I know that you have Joe Rogan, you have like The Ringer. There's just like some Barstool people I know left, and like they were involved with it. Yeah, there's just like this exclusive content, and like I don't know if you guys have ever listened to Joe Rogan on Spotify. I have. There's a million fucking ads, like a million. Like you listen to it, even if you have the premium membership, there's like. It's not uncommon for there to be like 5 ads in a row. It's just, it's absurd.
In May of 2020, Joe Rogan signed a licensing agreement with Spotify to be the exclusive platform for his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah.
Back then, Joe's podcast was a great way to hear about people, niches, and opinions never spoken about before. The long-form
Yeah,
style
probably
podcast
Zab.
gave voices and opinions that the mainstream ignored. With Joe Rogan's popularity inching every year, his podcast would then be littered with celebrity appearances, which
Yeah.
skyrocketed his show to new heights. And by 2017, Joe Rogan was the #1 international podcaster. And yet Joe Rogan's show was completely free on YouTube. With such a loyal fan base, this was the perfect content to bring in new users to Spotify. And so in 2021, Joe Rogan received $100 million to make his show for Spotify members only. However, with these big investors breathing down Spotify's neck, it would mean that Joe Rogan, a man known for his freedom-loving libertarian roots, would be forced into self-censorship. Since Joe Rogan moved to Spotify, his show has openly been censored on the platform, with Spotify's team reviewing thousands of his podcasts to remove all content that didn't fit their investors' beliefs. Or more importantly, what increases Spotify's ESG score, which is why the company would have to remove 75 Joe Rogan podcasts. But because Spotify was so desperate for their investors, they couldn't handle lowering Spotify's special ESG rating score. Little did they know, Joe Rogan would be hit by a cancel culture wave. In October 2021, Joe Rogan had a
Yeah, I think this is gonna be the video. I don't know if this is the video of him saying like the N-word. I don't know. Was that back then?
conversation with CNN's in-house medical
Oh, so this is when he talked to the guy from CNN about COVID.
advisor, Sanjay Gupta.
Sanjay Gupta,
Because
yeah.
a few days prior, Rogan had contracted COVID-19 and was prescribed ivermectin. A CNN report would later air shortly after Rogan's Instagram post regarding his medical condition and condemning Rogan
See, like what CNN did there to him though, they put like a color filter on him. Like, look how he looks like death. Like no human being looks like that. So stupid.
For taking and promoting a horse dewormer.
One of those drugs he mentioned, ivermectin, is something more often used to deworm horses.
As such, Rogan
See, I know it's a little off topic and we won't talk about it because we're talking about Spotify, but like Rogan should have sued CNN for that. Straight up should have. In my opinion, should have sued him.
condemned Gupta of lying for his news company and misrepresenting medical options for those with COVID-19. Joe Rogan then also added that he believed that vaccination should be optional. Because of this, Joe Rogan would obviously be lampooned by the mainstream media, frequently accused of spreading false information, with all of this heat coming to a clash on December 30th, when Joe Rogan would have an interview with Dr. Robert
he's
Malone.
he's
On
had
this episode, Dr.
some
Malone,
questionable
one of the
characters
developers of
on
the
for
mRNA
sure.
vaccines, would go on to compare the lockdown, mask mandates, and mandatory vaccinations as mass formation psychosis. As the clips of this portion of Rogan's podcast surfaced on YouTube, a real mass psychosis occurred, and many wanted to have Rogan burned at the stake, with
Yeah.
Rogan being demonized as a menace to public health.
See, the thing is, though, is that people were complaining about Rogan and all that and wanted him out. Dude, Spotify's like, listen, we got a $100 million contract, okay? It's not happening.
And an open letter was sent to Spotify signed by 270 US healthcare officials asking for the platform to censor Rogan's podcast. Then following this scandal, boomer corporate rock icon Neil Young threatened Spotify if they didn't remove the Joe Rogan
Yeah, I remember
experience
that.
from the platform. If they didn't remove his content, he would remove his music.
And I believe he did remove it, and then it was back on there like a short time later.
And so in January 2022, he actually did, along with other
See you later,
bigger
Henry.
artists such as Bruce Springsteen. Even though these artists would eventually crawl back, Spotify would go on to censor episodes and add content advisory panels to all content discussing these controversial topics.
Yeah.
Or in other words, if Spotify actually did allow freedom of content on the platform, then investors would give Spotify a bad investment score, meaning that current and new investors would be more likely to pull out of Spotify and put Spotify on the verge of bankruptcy. But while licensing and making their own content was one way of making money, it still wasn't enough for Spotify to retain its dominance. Instead, the real money for Spotify came, like with all social media apps, from selling user data. We can see this in the book Spotify Tailoring Inside the Black Box of Streaming Music. It was a book written by a group
I didn't even
of
think of
5
that, but
academics who
duh.
spent years studying the service. Spotify, they argue, exists at the confluence of industries such as music, advertising technology, and finance, rather than just being an independent player with the potential to shape the future of the music business. In the book, they describe how by using your emotions, playlists, and in-app behavior, Spotify sells your emotional response data to advertisers, meaning
Yep.
the albums you listen to could very well be chosen to be a gateway for sales across other industries. And in order to keep harvesting this data, Spotify's AI algorithms work to addict you to the app for as long as possible.
Yep.
This is done through Discover Weekly, Release Radar, and Daily Mixes, which are all based on personal
Which also ties into having that exclusive podcast content because you're on the platform longer, you're hearing ads longer, they're seeing what you're responding to. You have all these different, AI generated playlists, like they just said, and yeah, great.
listening habits, which self-reinforce the more you stay in your lane. Curated playlists they add tend to be happy because the more you listen to cheery, happy music, the more likely you are to remain listening on the app. And by listening more on the app, the more time they have to extract data. And by trying to make money this way, Spotify's business model has moved away from streaming and into data harvesting. So what sort of data is Spotify actually collecting from you? Well, just think about your first breakup. Do you remember the deep pain you felt? What did you do? Well, for a while, you may have listened to
I listened to Over and Over by 3 Days Grace. That's what I did.
a few songs repeatedly to make yourself feel better and cope with your pain.
Yeah.
And by doing this, you taught an algorithm and artificial intelligence something about how humans, namely yourself, manage your emotional trauma through music. From the minute you open the app, Spotify is tracking how you interact with it, from touches and taps to playlist
Yeah,
creation
right,
to
as
music
app, that's-
discovery
yeah,
and
true.
artist curation. This is how the app really makes its money. And all this behavior you're feeding the algorithm isn't the only thing it's tracking either.
A quick foray into their privacy policy is chilling.
Imagine all the
Yeah.
conscious decisions you've made in the app to pick a song, and then combine that with the location data, social media contacts, speakers, and IP addresses,
Yeah.
and Spotify starts to have a very clear picture of the global population's psyche.
That's why when people are like, listen, I'm not going on TikTok, okay? The Chinese will find out everything about me. It's like, they already do, okay? If you've been on the internet at all, they know who you are. Like, everybody knows who you are. It doesn't, like, they may not know you, like Richard, the person, but they know everything about, they probably know you better than you do behaviorally.
The way Spotify makes money is a sinister omen for our future society. A world where every emotion we feel, love, jealousy, hate, ambition, calmness, is all being fed into a giant AI machine that cuts up and sells your emotions to the highest bidder. A world where media, music, and content creation is monopolized under the control of mega banks and their investors. And with the creeping rise of the metaverse and the changing technological landscape, it's almost a certainty that these things will be the new norm. However, it does seem that
I saw that Olivia
to
Newton-John
exist,
died
for us to
today.
have
My
any
friend
streaming
told me that.
service with an
It's
amazing
crazy.
array of music, Spotify has to ride the wave of this current societal trend. Perhaps the only way for big tech businesses to survive anymore is to capitulate to the demands of corporate overlords that leech the creativity of groundbreaking ideas. And if that's the case, I guess we can rejoice at the small victories. The victories of a big tech platform like Spotify keeping up, quote, controversial topics no matter the noise of the mob. But are we really at a point where we have to feel grateful for only minor censorship? Are we really at a point now where our emotions being sold into a giant AI-powered technology is worth it to give the big labels even more money? A world where everything we think and feel is monitored without our consent? And will this sort of behavior eventually bring a backlash against big tech? Hopefully this will be a new trend, a trend where we regain control of our emotions, impulses, freedom, and the autonomy of our brains.
Damn. Yeah, so this guys, this was a video by a guy named Moon. Yeah, let me get because this was on my watch later. Let me pull up the original video here. Yeah, this is by a guy named Moon. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him or whatever, but if you want to check him out, there's the link there. He does like a lot of really cool videos. Like, for example, like we'll just look at his channel real quick. You have like The Truman Show Tried to Warn You, The Disturbing History of Google, The Moment Instagram Changed Forever, Why Disney is Collapsing, Discord is Worse Than You Thought. He does like a lot of like really deep dive, like very interesting videos. And yeah, so Spotify is oh man. And just to think, man, I got this playlist right here on Spotify. I'm complicit in the AI military complex system. I am. So are you.